Enrique, thank you for joining us for the Future Founder Summit. We're really excited to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me.
This is really exciting for me because I've had the opportunity to both work with you and be friends with you for a while. So I'm excited to share with everyone some of the things that are so unique and special about you and that have been pretty influential on me especially. So I thought we could kick things off with dreams and where it all started. I'd love it if you could share with us a little bit about what inspired you and what got you excited about building early on.
Yeah, so let me share a little bit of the story. So my background, I'm originally born and raised in Brazil. Started in a city a couple hours from Sao Paulo, and I started coding when I was quite young because there was this game I wanted to play, and it was a paid game, and I figured out if I learned how to code, I could play it for free. My parents didn't want to pay it for me because, gambling and gaming is the same word in Portuguese. So they said, hey, I'm not going to give you money to gamble, and so that's kind of coding was the resort that I had to play this game because they give us a week trial and I was like fully addicted to it. And so I started learning how to code and build this pirate version of the game that was exactly like the original one. But instead of charging a monthly fee, like the original game, you could play the game for free and buy items inside it. That was kind of like my first endeavor with gaming. And then after 2 years kind of learning it and launching it, I got these legal notifications saying I was breaking some sort of patents. I didn't really know what patents were, but my mom got super upset and told me to shut everything off. So that's kind of how I started out my coding career, I would say. And then at 14, I was having this kind of like 14-year-old crisis, because I had just spent this like 2 years doing like this. I didn't do any homework. I missed school a ton. It's the only thing I did. And so I started doing some normal stuff. I found a girlfriend. I started watching TV shows, and I started watching this TV show called Chuck. That was like a really good computer hacker and programmer. And Chuck had this awesome life saving the world through the CIA, and I basically decided that I wanted to be like him. And Chuck had gone to Stanford, so I decided I needed to go to Stanford because Chuck went to Stanford. And that became my main goal and my main idol in my life at that point. So after, wanting to be Chuck, I tried to figure out how to get into Stanford, but the whole like US application process for like international students is quite complicated. So I didn't really understand much how it worked. So I started going on Facebook, and I found this dude that was graduating from Stanford, and he was starting a ticketing company in Brazil. And we started talking, and we went to Skype. On Skype, started becoming friendly, and he was like making this deal with me that I would code for him for free. In exchange, he would teach me the whole Stanford application process and write me a recommendation letter. And I thought that was awesome. That's great. Let's do that. And so I worked for this guy for a year in his startup. We built a product, launched, raised money, and he had this like pretty cool life. Every time I talked to him, he was doing these things that seemed really cool. He was pitching to these like angel investors. I was like, wow, these are like angels. I didn't even know what that was at the time. And he was like building pitch decks and hiring people and building product. And that just seemed like an awesome life. So I worked there for a year, but after a year, I was like, okay, I want to try to do my own thing. This guy is amazing, but I want to try to go on my own. So I tried to start an education company that basically helped other Brazilian students of the whole US application process. And that went super failed. We got a bunch of users, but none of them was willing to pay for anything. But it was kind of good. I was in the press a lot, and it was kind of having to open a company and try to raise money and not working. It was kind of like a good experience. At this point, my parents weren't super happy with this whole entrepreneurship thing, just wanted me to focus on school. So we had this big fight. I got emancipated, moved out of my house. It was a whole drama. And then I was, kind of supporting myself at the time. And then I found this hackathon in Miami that was worth $50,000. And I was like, okay, if I can spend time, if I can win this thing, is more time, being able to support myself. So I went with two friends and we built this app called Ask Me Out, which is like Tinder, but instead of geolocations, Facebook friends, you could like and match your Facebook friends. And turns out we won the thing, won the $50,000, came back to Brazil and tried to launch it as a business, but it also didn't work. No, it didn't get the network effects it had, but that's kind of how I got into payments. And around the same time, I met my co-founder Pedro, and his background quickly. He started coding when he was like 9 years old, and then when he was 12, he was the first person to find the jailbreak for the iPhone 3G. So he got like very hacker famous, and he got hired by Brazil's largest payments company to work on their iOS app. Because no one in Brazil understood about iOS security, and they were like, building a payments app. So they, Pedro's hacking iPhone, so they hired him to get into that. He also got some legal notifications from Apple, which his mom got upset. We bonded about that. But we met in the end of 2012, basically right after I had won that hackathon, and he was working in a bunch of cool stuff. And we met over Twitter, basically fighting on Twitter about text editors. I was Vim, he was Emacs. It got too complicated to fight over 140 characters. We went to Skype. On Skype, we became best friends and decided to start a company together. And that's how we started our first company, Pagarme. Pagarme was kind of like the Stripe of Brazil. So we did online payment processing in Brazil. And that was the first company that worked. We actually had over 150 employees. We were profitable. We had a good amount of revenue. We had a good run there until we sold the company in September 2016 to basically because we both got into Stanford. So we went to Stanford and then dropped out to start Brex, which is what we're working on today. So that's the 5-minute version of the story of how we started out.
Thank you for sharing that. So I'm very curious, who are some of the people that help sort of with that arc, right? You started with the video games, ended up selling a company by the time you were 18. Who are some of the key people that had influence in helping you think big?
Yeah, so I tell this whole story, and it kind of seems like we did a lot by ourselves, and we figured a lot of stuff out. But the reality, we had a lot of help. We were lucky enough to meet, I think, two people that highly influenced us. The first one was this guy, Andre Street. He was the founder of Stone, but his story was so similar to ours. He started, a payments company when he was 15 years old, and he sold that, and then started another one and sold that one too, and was starting a third payments company that today is called Stone. It's a huge, $20 billion payments company in Brazil now, and public in the US. And he was our first investor and invested in us early on, and he became this kind of like mentor entrepreneurship. He helped us, he invested in our company. He taught us how to hire, how to fire, how to build a sales team, how to deal with people, how to do BD deals, how to raise money. He taught us a lot of what we know about the tactical parts of building a company. And we're super lucky because we were 16 and we didn't know anything. So having someone super close like that to teach us really was fundamental and changed our lives forever. And the second person was, Jorge Paulo Lemann. He was at the time the richest guy in Brazil. He owned this, Anheuser-Busch, the big beer company. And he basically he taught us a lot as well, but he was a huge inspiration for us because he always pushed us to dream bigger. Every time we came to talk to him about something, he always pushed her, why not more? Why can't you do bigger? How do you go bigger? And when we were, thinking about selling the company or not, he was pushing us, yes, sell the company, go to Silicon Valley, build something bigger. So it kind of always pushed us to dream a lot bigger, which I think it's Brex's number one value today is dream big. And I think it's something that's very personal for Pedro and I, this concept of dreaming big. So that was hugely, hugely influential in our lives.
Could you talk a little bit about that transition, going to the Silicon Valley, dreaming big, and then starting Brex? I'd love it if you could share with all of us, what were some of the things that were going through your mind when you decided to start Brex? And how big are you dreaming? What are your ambitions with Brex?
So the big decision for us was selling or not selling the company, right? That was the thing that we were thinking, do we sell, do we not sell? The business is doing super well. It's profitable. It's growing over 100% a year. We have scale. The market is doing really well. But we decided to sell it. We decided to sell it for three reasons. So the first one is we never liked this idea of being serial entrepreneurs and building a lot of companies. We actually just wanted, by influence from Jorge Paulo and others, to build one company and just work on it for 30 years, just be one thing, work on it for a long time, and do that. And And we thought Pagarami might be it, but there was no like Brazilian unicorns at the time. There's no companies in Brazil worth more than $1 billion at the time. So we thought, hey, if we're going to build something for 30 years, it might as well be something really big. And it seems that everything big comes from Silicon Valley. So that was number one. Number two is when you're younger, and you don't have a lot of money, you're kind of more anxious, for the financial outcome. So, we're 20 and broke, right? So like the financial outcome for us was going to change our lives. And the third thing is we both had this dream of like going to Stanford for a long time. So we kind of wanted to check it out and see how it was. So I think like it was a hard decision, but those were kind of the three reasons where we decided to sell the company and come. And, we're very happy we did. Brex is doing great. We're super happy about it. And I think Brex can be very big. And, I shifted my mindset. Dreaming big for me doesn't mean a specific milestone now. It doesn't mean like, how do I get to a specific place? It means like, how do you keep doing what you're doing and compounding for a long period of time, right? Like, I think I could say like, Brex is going to be a 10, 50, 100, 200, a trillion, 100 trillion and a half. Like, I don't know what size company Brex will be, but eventually, it's going to get to a really big size with enough time. So the big thing for me now is like, how do we build a company and we build the right systems to keep doing this company for long enough that it becomes like a really big company and it compounds at a really fast rate for a really long time.
Could you talk a little bit about what some of those systems are? Like, what are the things that you have to keep improving? How are some of the ways that you keep improving? Is it all by yourself? Are you influenced by peers? How do you like, what are the ways in which you keep that system of improvement going?
The important piece here is, is number one, how do you build a company that you want to work for 20 years, right? Or for me specifically, which is, I think a lot of times, entrepreneurs, they stop in the middle because, they become wealthy and then, they don't like the problems of big companies and, they want to go into something smaller. And so the first question is like, how do I build something that I can work for 20 years? And sometimes that is, making the company work better for yourself, right? And, an example of that, remote, for example, for Brex was a really personal decision, right? Like at the end of the day, you can build big companies that are large, being in person, being remote, and obviously there's pros and cons of both. But in the end of the day, and every founder I talk to is the same, what do you want to do? Do you want to work in a remote company or do you not want to work in a remote company? Pedro and I wanted to work in a remote company. And I think that, besides all of the business arguments, that was definitely a factor in our decision. Another example is who do you hire, right? Like, do you hire someone that just will perform or someone that will perform and you are going to work with them for a long time? That's another thing. Your investors, do you optimize for the best valuation or do you optimize for the investors you want to work with for a long time? So sometimes there's these like optimizations for the company that, we choose to do the things that will make us want to work in this business for a long period of time. And I think that's like super important. The second thing is making sure that you give enough autonomy and empower people to make the right decisions, right? And that comes from values and culture. And I think that setting the right values, it's basically a way of making people make better decisions when you're not there. And because as the company grows, you can't be in every decision. And, if you want a company to live on even after you die, or, if you get hit by a bus, you need to have strong values and strong culture in place. So people are making the right decisions at any point in time in the company.
Thank you for sharing that. We are at the Future Founder Summit. And the idea here is that there are a lot of people who have big dreams and at some point want to start a company of their own. Do you have any advice for people who are thinking about starting something or just on that cusp of having started something? What advice would you give them?
I think my advice would be start something. I think I interview a lot of people and they always think that they need to do this and do that, and then you prepare themselves to build a company. And I think the only thing to prepare yourself to build a company is building a company. So don't be afraid of failure. Just go and do something. Like we started our first company when we were, 14 and it failed, and we tried another one and it failed again. And the third one worked out a little bit, and Brex is working out more. And, if Brex fails for some reason, we're going to try again. And I think, you need to go through a lot of that in order to be successful. So just don't wait, just go now and start.
That's really exciting. Thank you so much for your time. We're really grateful for it. And, I hope that, the future founders out there take this to heart and start something.